Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caitlin Donahue, and I am the chair of PLEN. And we're joined today with Valerie Biden Owens as a way to commemorate our 44th anniversary this June. PLEN turned 44. And what better way to commemorate that than celebrate by talking to Valerie Biden Owens about her life, her career, and her recent book. I've had the opportunity to come to know Val through her daughter, as well as my good friend, Annie Tomasini. But I actually met you, Val, long before I knew either of them. It was my first work conference. I was 23 years old, and I was sent to Florida to the Public Affairs Council PAC conference. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever done because it was really kind of the first time I had left Boston. I grew up in Massachusetts. I went to school in Worcester, and they sent me down with an expense account. And I was like, am I supposed to be here? Like, am I supposed to have that drink? Am I allowed to have that drink? Needless to say, it was a lot of fun, but one of the most memorable sessions from that conference was you spoke at it, and you were with Joe Slade White at the time.
Oh,
and you spoke about political campaigns, and you showed us a lot of amazing videos. And so anyway, I had the pleasure of meeting you then. You left an indelible mark on me then.
Well, that's nice.
Yes. Little did I know that years later I would have the chance to come to know you through your daughter. But regardless, thank you for blazing such an amazing path, such a pace for so many of us. And I think a lot of us are going to learn a lot from this conversation today. So that said, you recently wrote a memoir called Growing Up Biden. And tell us a little bit about why you decided now and what you hope people come away from the book with.
Excuse me. Thank you. First of all, I'm joking, but I'm fine.
Please don't leave us.
I'm not going to expire on this spot here. The book Growing Up Biden. Well, for most of the stories in the book, I had written years ago. I'm a storyteller. You know, when people have a lot on their mind, or they have a lot of pent up energy, some people go out and run a marathon, and others play the piano or create a beautiful drawing. Well, I sit down and I write. And it was the Catholic school upbringing. The nun said, Miss Biden, it's much harder to write a 500-word composition than it is a 3-page composition, because you have to get your thoughts down. And so I would sit down, and that's how I expressed myself. And I wrote about all different, whatever the emotion was that I was feeling at the time. I just sat down and wrote about it. So the book, I didn't start out to write a book. My children said to me, Mom, there's so many good stories in here. You know, you should write a book. And I said, who cares? And they said, Mom, we care. Write it for us, and write it for your grandchildren. And the book is about the magic of family. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're all, my brother, I have 3 brothers. We grew up in a middle class, mid 20th century Irish Catholic family in Wilmington, Delaware. And I know that our circumstances now are different because my family has my brother as president. So but each family has a unique story. And what I think, Caitlin, is the threads that weave the fabric of family together, that's commitment and loyalty and love and heartbreak and loss and betrayal, all those things that go into family. Probably everyone who's listening today, has felt the same thing. And what I've come to understand and believe so firmly is that there's so much more that connects us than not. And it's an old-fashioned word called empathy. It's a fancy word. It just means that we can absorb each other's feelings. So what I want, next question that I always get is, so what do you want people to take away from the book? I mean, what's the purpose? And what I think what would make me feel like a really grown-up author is when you, Caitlin, or anyone who's listening, picks up the book and puts it down and said, oh my God, she got me. That's me. Or that's my brother. or I have an uncle just like that. And if you can see in some degree yourself or a part of your family in the book, then I will think for myself that I did a good job.
Well, I certainly did. I mean, we share obviously a lot of commonality in terms of growing up Irish Catholic in the Northeast, but it felt like a warm hug, quite frankly, at a time when all of us need a warm hug. And I think so much of that is really just your honesty and candor about the good and the bad. And the fact that, I mean, I think one of the things I took away from it is 44 or 48 years from the day
Oh yeah.
your brother won his first race as what, Newcastle
It
County?
was, and no, it was when 1972, November 7th, 1972, we were elected to the United States Senate at 29 years old. And November 7th, 2020, he was elected president, formally declared president of the United States. And that is pretty amazing, isn't it?
If that doesn't, I mean, I have chills, I'm sure everyone listening does. If that doesn't just talk about perseverance and persistence and grit in that, 48 years later, the dream can come true. So what's important to this audience, obviously, we are an organization that prepares young women for leadership and public policy. And, you were the first woman to run a presidential campaign. Not only were you the first woman, but you were the first woman to do it at a time when a lot of people thought that you shouldn't and couldn't do it. And early on in the book, you say, I didn't know what I was doing, but that didn't stop me. And I just think that that is, so critical for every young woman to hear in terms of like, how do you move forward in your life? How do you move forward in your career? So share with us a little bit about, not only being the first, but about all of the roles that you've had in and throughout your campaigning.
Joe was 29 when we ran for the Senate. I was 26. I was a high school teacher. And he had been my best friend my entire life. So wherever he went, he took me with him from the time I was a little girl. He said, come on, Val, we've got things to do and places to go and people to see. And we went off on our journey. And he told me that whatever he could do, I promised my Biden word of honor, he said, Valerie, you can do it better. He said, you're smarter than I am. You're a better person than I am. You're kinder than I am, whatever it was, which was impossible. He was 3 years older and it was impossible. But I knew that I owed it to him and to myself to try to grow up to be that little girl and then that woman that he thought I was capable of being. So I think the bottom line is that, not the bottom line, the basis of everything is confidence. I think that's the number one prerequisite for success in life. And I was fortunate enough to have parents and my brothers to instill that confidence and make me believe. And when I say that, we didn't know what we were doing, but we just went and jumped in. That makes me a little bit braver than I was. Sometimes it's wise. It's a good thing to know what you don't know, because otherwise you might be intimidated. Like, had I known the world that I was going into, where women only opened and closed headquarters and got coffee and answered the telephone, had I known that there was a hostile environment there were no, when I say no, there may have been one, as a generalization, but there were, maybe there was another woman candidate. There were no women campaign managers. There were a few women journalists. There were no women media consultants. There were no women pollsters. But I didn't know any better. So, and I thought, well, my brother's 29. He thinks he's the first senator that he and I ever met. So I thought, well, hell, if he could be a U.S. senator at 29, I sure could be a campaign manager at 26. And we had each other. And what we did have, we had no money, no influence, no power, but we had commitment and we have energy and we had vision. And we just rolled up our sleeve. Lots of times when you don't have all those resources, it's a good thing because you really have to improvise and you have to think out of the box. And that's an old expression, but that's what we had to think on our feet.
Mhm.
And also in 1972, what was good is that there was a combustible relationship between youth and energy and the issues.
Mhm.
And issues were, we were against the war in Vietnam, we were for civil rights, and we were one of the first campaigns to ever mention planet Earth. And we talked about the environment. So the time was ripe, and we just went with it. There was nobody, Caitlin, to tell us what we couldn't
No.
do, couldn't be able to do. And you got to trust your instinct. You got to be smart. You got to do smart, meaning prepare, do your homework, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are in the areas where you're not so smart.
Mhm.
Listen to them, weigh what they say, but listen to your gut and do it the way you think should be done.
I think that's so incredibly important, again, for so many of us to hear. And, you talk a little bit about how you believe women are the ultimate leaders. And can you speak to that? What do you think it is about women that makes us naturally or innate leaders?
Well, first of all, if you think about it, it sounds facetious, but we are the vital cog in the supply chain. We're it.
True.
Okay. So, I mean, we're the first teachers. We're the mother, particularly the first teachers, the first source of sustenance, the first source of encouragement. So women, we are not inherently better than men. We could be as venal, we could be as mean-spirited, we could be as brilliant as men. What we are is different. And that's what we have to embrace. We have different approach shots than men. All we need is opportunity. And that's what the struggle has been about, the opportunity. Because once we get the opportunity, we excel. And so, what is it? The Chinese philosopher said, women are half the sky.
Mhm.
Well, men make up the other half. And we got to work in partnership, and we got to train our little boys not to be threatened by a strong woman. A strong woman knows how to work with men. And one of the things, Caitlin, the honest to God's truth is, we women have not been our sister's keeper, especially in my generation. There was one spot coming up in my generation, and when that woman got it, she held on to it. She said, now you figure it out for yourself, kid. I worked to get here. But now we're not equity yet, but we're reaching parity, and there's room. And I'll try and close it up because
keep going. This is all fantastic. Keep going.
I can talk too much, but that's why we, as women leaders, there are two things we have to pay attention to right now, and that's mentorship and sponsorship. And there's a difference. Mentoring means I say, come on, Caitlin, I'm an old saw campaign management. Come on, come with me, and I'll put you under my wing, and I'll show you how to do this. And you say, well, thank you, Mrs. Owens. That's great. But you got to go one step further than that, and it's sponsorship. And I say, Caitlin, these are the things you need to know about management or whatever the business, wherever I am. And guess what? Now I'm going to do, Caitlin. I'm going to take you, Caitlin, and I'm going to drop you right in the pool, and you're going to do it yourself.
Mhm.
I'm going to walk along the pool with you so that you don't drown. I'm going to be there, but you got to taste it and do it yourself. And it's that next step that women have to do for other women, is not only mentor them, but sponsor them, give them the opportunity to shine. And that's what we'll do.
I couldn't agree more. I have a saying that I also too, at some point in my life, hope to write, when I have some free headspace, but something I'd like to write about is when women are the patriarchy. And I've found that to be a lot more true in my life, in that how come it's that sometimes the men in my career and the men in my life, and, with your example of your brother, like there's sometimes the ones that are pulling me along and sponsoring me more than some of the women are. Yeah. And I think it's unfortunate, but
you know what, one thing too, that when I do make remarks about women's leadership. I also want to underline that to be a woman leader, you don't have to be out in front all the time. I mean, women, a woman leader can be pat behind your back, go ahead, or the whisper in your ear, or grabbing your hand and walking side by side, or the one who's in front of you and just yanking you and, pulling you over the line. Women leaders do not, to be a leader doesn't mean you have to have a title. It means that you have to have your character, you have to have direction, you have to have backbone, you have to have empathy, and you can listen as well as speak, and you share. So you don't have to run for elective office to be a woman leader, or you don't have to be a CEO to a woman leader. Often the woman, an old school example, because we don't have even filing cabinets anymore, but the woman who can run the office is often the woman who's in that old, what we used to call the filing room. But I don't think we don't exist anymore, but you know what I mean. But I hope you know what I mean.
I do. No, I really do. Cause I would put myself in that category. I don't love being out in front. I don't love being the number one. I'm a really good number two. I can keep the trains running on time.
It looks like you're a pretty good number one. So I'm not putting down. Look, I'm not, go for number one. That's what I mean, that's fine.
Sometimes you don't want to be number one. Sometimes I think the point is too, at some point you're going to be in different spaces at different times. Right. Sometimes you're the number one, sometimes you're behind the scenes, sometimes you're in front of the scenes. And that's every single piece of that is important.
It's the personality of what fits her and but we've got to have, it's about confidence and to speak up and be smart about when you speak up and to whom you speak up to. That's not a grammar, but I think you got the idea.
That's okay. You're a little jet lagged. I think, you're just Valerie's just getting back from Greece. So she's so gracious to be joining us. I want to get into a couple of the fun stories in the book, just because it is so great. And again, I think a lot of people who are joining us have read it. If you haven't, read it if you need something to feel good about. And again, I felt like it was a warm hug, but you talk about how the 1972 Senate campaign was your favorite, and really, like, obviously all of the events that have ensued, including the presidency, are major milestones. But tell us about 1972, why it was so important, what your role was, and what the takeaways were.
In 1972, which was the year of President Nixon's landslide victory over George McGovern. So that was the year that we were running. We were a virtual unknown in the state of Delaware. Forget nationally. No, we were unknown in the state of Delaware. Like I said, we were the first senator that we ever met. But what we did is the press dubbed us the Children's Crusade, because we didn't have money. We didn't have, quote unquote, important people or pundits to come in to tell us how to run a campaign. I was a teacher. I taught high school, and I would be fired for it now, but I kind of jokingly said if my kids in high school didn't work in the campaign, I would flunk them. So, I put it in a positive way that they could learn about campaigns in the classroom, or they could go out and actually become involved. And they did all of our posters. They created our campaign slogans, our pins. And what we had the Biden post office, which was from Labor Day weekend to the November election, 6-week period. We hand delivered 150,000 pieces of literature to almost every home in the state with this Children's Crusade that we organized, and block captains, because we didn't have any money for posters and for postage or for stamps and for fancy brochures. So it was magic. When, for anybody who's listening who's a parent, we parents often think that we influence our children, and we do. But what we learn is that children influence us more than we influence them. And when these Republican parents, we're a Republican state. Nixon won overwhelmingly in our state, But when they saw their sons and daughters get up on a Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, when they normally wouldn't get out of bed until noon, but they got up at 6 o'clock in the morning to work hours hand delivering these newspapers to the houses in the state. They said, I better take another look at this guy Biden. There's something to him. If Janie gets up and will do this, well, I'm gonna pay attention. And I believe it was those Republican parents who never would have voted for a Democrat or a Christ Almighty, switched and voted for Joe Nixon and Joe Biden. And we, as I said, we won by 3,163 votes. And I think, it was a children's crusade. And I think the children pulled us over the line.
I think that's so interesting and so incredible in terms of also just using the resources that you have. You had a bunch of students at your disposal. I mean, what an interesting lesson, right? Like, you tapped into the network that you had.
And it became the thing to do. I mean, then those kids got the other kids. Like, we didn't have money to hire a band or music for the convention. And again, the Democratic Party wrote us off. They said, Biden, who's Biden? And they didn't have a candidate. We were running against a man who was invincible, twice governor, 3 times House, running for the 3rd time as Senate. They didn't even pay any attention to us. But so what we did, we didn't have any money for anything. So we got the local high schools to all create a brand new band. And the day that the convention in June, which is the last weekend before school went out, we met in the parking lot, and this desperate band of all high school kids, we burst open the doors and we went marching through, horns ablazing. And we took everybody by surprise because we just wouldn't quit. And we had something that was really worth working for. Mm-hmm. Civil rights and Vietnam. And the kids had skin in the game also, because this is the first year that 18-year-olds could vote. And mm-hmm. they were going to the war, or their brother or sister who was in college was going to be drafted and go into the war. Mm-hmm. And the kids, this was everybody had seen Bull Connor and what happened, we were still a segregated state.
That's what I was just going to say. I think that's what's so incredible, to understand, is that in 1972, Delaware was still a segregated state.
Yeah, we were just coming out. I mean, in high school, my brother's football team, when they would finish playing the game, there was a local place where all the kids would go for, hamburgers and milkshakes. And the team walked in and sat at the counter, and because there was a black guy in the team, they wouldn't serve him. So of course, Joe left, the team left, but it seems like that. I mean, that's ancient history. Mm-hmm. It's not. Mm-hmm. I mean, look where we are, going back to Jim Crow laws and voting rights, which is probably the most critical. I don't want to talk about that. I'm talking about my book. So I don't want to the politics.
No, well, I think you touch upon something important in that anecdote, which is just your brother and his character, and who he is and what he stands for. And the overarching theme, as you said, of the book is family. It rings so true with me. Those of you that know me know my brother is my best friend too. He's my best friend. He's my confidant. He's the guy that tells me. He's really probably the only person in my life that tells me when I need to shape up.
Is he older or younger?
He's younger. He's my younger older brother, which is really, and you were the younger older sister in many ways, right?
Yeah, I have 2 younger brothers who still think they're my older brother. I mean, but my favorite line was just, it's not easy raising an older brother, and they all think they're my older brother.
Exactly. But so tell us a little bit about, you get into this in the book, but what is it and what was it that made your relationship so special? What worldviews do you share? And finally, I think it's critical to have a person. You have to have a person in life, whether it's a spouse, a brother, a family member, a best friend, a sponsor, a mentor, someone who is going to be sort of your guiding star, North Star, who just you have the unwavering trust of, and vice versa. And I love that. I love that about the book and your story?
Well, our mom and dad told us that, my three brothers and me, that that we were a gift to one another, and we believed them. And when we walked out of the house, my mother said, once that door shut, she said, remember, you're Bidens. Now, that didn't mean we're Bidens like we were the Kennedys or the Rockefellers. It meant that we were Bidens, four little kids, and it was our job to have each other's back.
Mhm.
That's what it was all about, was growing up. And here comes my puppy dog. Come on. And I lost what I distracted myself.
Well,
because
what's
my
your
dog
puppy's name?
his name is Chief. But so
Hi,
growing
Chief.
up, so my parents told us that we were a gift to one another, and we had to take care of one another. And it's important to have someone in your life who the word was trust. And when you love and respect someone, you expect the best of them. And it's very difficult for, I think, many people in leadership positions to have truth tellers around them, because they surround themselves with sycophants, not necessarily because they want to. Maybe they want yes men, but it's a profile in courage to stand up and to tell your boss that you think she's full of malarkey,
Mhm.
because your salary and your future and your family and your income, they all depend on your getting along with your boss. I had no place. I always had a seat at the table. I was a sister. Nobody could fire me. What's he going to do? Disown me? So he looked to me to tell him the truth, because he knew it came from love and respect.
Mhm.
If you said the same thing with your brother, they'll turn to me and they'll say the same thing. Val, I think that was out of line, or,
Mhm.
what the heck were you thinking when you did that? But I know it comes from love. And mom and dad said there's family, and there's family, and then there's family. And the
Mhm.
reason that it worked, the same values, is that, again, we're Catholic school kids. We're practicing Catholics, but we weren't pious. We went to mass on Sunday. We didn't eat meat on Friday, because we could, and we gave up candy during Lent,
Mhm.
but that was
Mhm.
it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. But the values that we learned in the Catholic school of social justice were the ones that meshed with the values that mom and dad raised us, that, there, but for the grace of God, go I. We are our brother's keeper. And we lived that. We didn't practice the religion. We lived that life to the best of our ability, failing miserably as always. But that's what we tried. That's what we tried to do. We didn't wear it on our sleeve. It was part of us. And faith got us through some of the really tougher times. Like, the other thing people say to me, Caitlin, all the time is, your family, you've had so much tragedy. And yeah, we have. But so have you. So have every woman or person who's listening and participating in this. And it's like Dad says, not how many times you get knocked down, is how quickly you get back up. And adversity, I believe, builds character more than the spoils of victory. And so you just get back up, and you keep moving forward. I don't know if I answered your question, because my dog really Chief. Now we went back out again. Okay.
Now we need to know what kind of dog is Chief, and is Chief a pandemic dog? Did you get him during the pandemic?
No, I've had him. He's a black male standard poodle, and he's 3 years old. And we grew up with them. The kids grew up with them all of their life. I have a picture. If I hold,
can you please show us?
Oh, he has his pride ribbon on today.
Oh, look at him. He's so sweet.
And he came back up here in my office to show me how good he looked, and he still had his ribbon on.
Yeah, he just wanted to make sure we were talking about him too.
Yeah.
No, it does answer my question, because I think, again, one of the things that you talk about in your book is that really, until you sat down to write the book, you hadn't ever codified all of the lessons and sort of values and morals that you and the president and your brothers lived by every day until you said, oh, these were them. And I thought that was an important lesson and something that all of us can take away, which is like, know your principles and know your values. And whether you got them from your family or you get them from your friends or another network or your church or your religion, I think it's so important to have those worldviews, codified somewhere, written down, and that is truly going to be what guides you through your life and through your career.
Yeah, like, as I said in the book, that we never had the rules written on the refrigerator door,
Mm-hmm.
but we always knew what was expected of us, Mom and we were very hesitant to disappoint them, because they were good parents. They were kind, they were strict, they weren't our best friends. We knew what the rules were, but my mom and dad said whatever we did, they would be there for us, but we had to tell them the truth. Tell me the truth. I'll be there to put you in jail or get you out of jail, or put you in trouble or get you out of trouble. But tell me the truth, and I'll stand by you. And again, we were not, this is not, oh, we're so sweet, we're such good little kids. We were full of hell and raised some hell, but it really was the magic of family, of knowing that we had each other.
So given that you are a sister and have been the sister throughout your career, how do you, because I think that this is something also women struggle with a lot, is like, we want to show up as our authentic, empathetic selves, because to your point, that's what makes us uniquely women. But then we also feel like we have to have, that facade in many ways, where it's like, you can't be too empathetic or too authentic. And so how have you distinguished between being a sister versus being a professional or a campaign professional? And did you find yourself at times, and there's a specific example in the book that I would reference, which is when, there was a gentleman in Iowa during the Iowa campaign in 2008 who thought he had hung up the phone, was saying a few bad words about you. You did not fire him at the time because he said at that moment, the campaign was more important than my ego. And so anyway, I loved that moment, but I also just think it speaks to this bigger thing about like showing up as a sister, showing up as a campaign manager. How did you manage that?
Well, sometimes showing up as a sister is harder. As a campaign manager, as a professional, I know what I'm about. The campaign, I have my ego in check. Because the campaign's not about Joe or about me, it's about the voters, and I'm usually pretty good at keeping things in perspective. But as a sister, it's a little bit harder. You said, say what? You said what about my brother? You want to talk? Let's talk about that. And I have to really, there are a couple stories in the book that I did step out of my lane. I'm not going to tell them because I hope you read the book, those who haven't, but they were not some of my finer moments. But it's hard. Like when you love somebody, you'd rather take the hit yourself. You're a pro, and if I say, Caitlin, you did a terrible job on this or whatever, and you'll deal with it and deal with me in an appropriate way. But when I say, your brother's a creep, I met him, and and people, the hard part is, I find, is when I feel like I'm being bullied, which is the bullies are cowards, and cowards won't say to your face. They have something to say about my brother, or what he's done or what he hasn't done. They'll come and they'll tell me and like to put the knife in me. And I say, and I smile and I said, well, you know what? Oh, and especially if they're the story, and this man, and his wife was with him, and he delivered his, the ugly glove, like the little knife, and smiling, the perfect gentleman. And I looked at his wife and I said, "Oh, you must be so proud of him." I said, "He has such courage that he would come up and tell me that, instead of saying that to my brother, who happens to be right over there, that side of the room. Why did you go tell my brother that? Oh, and you're a lucky woman. I hope you enjoy for the rest of your life." So I'm not good all the time. And or even I have a harder time dealing with an attack on my brother than I do
Isn't that
attack
on yourself? It's so
Yeah.
interesting.
But I think it's true of mostly all of you. Like, I mean, you go, anybody that's after your brother, you're not interested in having a conversation with them.
No, not at all. Well, I think that again gets to a really good point, because you say that your brother actually takes the hits much less. I mean, he is sort of impervious to the criticism and the critique. So tell us a little bit about him. What's what do you think his best quality is, and how are those qualities manifesting in his presidency?
I think, sometimes you think that the terrible things that happen to you are the worst thing in the world. I'm instead of making this a puzzle, let me start from the beginning. My brother, when he was a little boy, had a terrible stutter. He couldn't string more than 3 words together at a time. And he was made fun of by adults as well as by children. And people assumed that, stutterers were stupid. And my mother would say to him, "Joey, you're not stupid. You're so smart. You stutter because you're so smart. You can't get the words out. Your mind can't get the words out fast enough. That's how smart you are." Again, building confidence. And layer by layer, my brother built a backbone of steel. And he determined that he was not going to be defined by the bully. By the bully who said, "Biden, go there. Get out of my way." And so what was his greatest adversity at that time built this little boy and built this character in this little boy. And when you've been bullied, and something we all, I mean, I still remember the girl in high school, or
Isn't that funny?
we all still remember. So it's not that he's so unique, but we know that we have a choice, that we can either become a bully ourselves when we're in a position, or we can realize that we're all in this together and develop empathy. And that's what I think we're lacking a lot in today's society, of empathy. So my brother chose empathy. And that's why whether you agree with him and his principles or his policies, there's nobody there are very few people who don't agree that, there's no daylight between the private man and the public citizen. I mean, he's the same. He says what he means what he says, and he's going to go ahead and he's going to do it. So I think I think his character was developed mostly to a large part because of that adversity. And I think that's how he governs. That's why people connect to him. He's authentic. There's nothing that's not real about Joe Biden. So it's not fake. He's an authentic guy, and you don't have to like him. Doesn't mean that you like him, but you know where he stands.
Yeah, it's funny. I obviously throughout the years I've had the opportunity to meet him and be in the same room with him, and I went to a White House Christmas party in December of 2021 with Annie, and I mean, it'd been years since I'd seen him. It'd been years since I'd been in a room with him, and it's been years since any of us had been in the room in the White House, right? I mean, it was kind of a crazy time, but it was just one of those things where, I mean, you're standing in the White House and he walks into the room, and it's just undeniable that he is not only the president of the United States, but he's showing up 1,000% who he is. And it's an energy that he has. And, for those of us that have been lucky to meet him and be in the room with him, it's quite a skill and a gift. And, I think all that adversity as well, when I think about, what we talked about with 1972 and, it's hard today. I mean, you look at the world and you think this is the end of times and how much worse can it get? And you just think about, well, he's seen a lot before. And
yes, he has. He has. And what kills me, gets to me is, the kid who's been made, still the man, not the kid, the president who makes fun of, because he's still, you can still hear words get stuck in his throat. And he's castigated for that. He can't get his words out. And I say, yeah, the guy who stuttered couldn't put 3 words together, put NATO together. So what do you have to say about that? Yeah,
it's pretty incredible. So what's your relationship like today? What did he think about the book?
He liked the book. My relationship, first and foremost, he's my brother. And I can't think of any. I suppose there's some things that I would do that he could deny me, but he doesn't. He loved the book. It's the first thing I did that I gave it to him when it was finished. I didn't do it with him. And that was a really big step. And the reason is I thought, geez, here I am writing, and I'm trying to remember an event or, Joey, what did you think about this? And I'm thinking, wait a minute. He's negotiating with Putin now. I can't call and say, wait a minute, do you remember what happened in Scranton? And so I said, look, I'm gonna do this on my own. And I did.
Did he call you out? So first of all, if I know him, he probably would take your call.
Oh, of course,
regardless of where he is.
He calls me, of course.
But second, did he call you out on any inaccuracies? Was he like, Val, that's not how I remembered it?
No. It was pretty. I checked with Jimmy Biden about some of the stuff, but it was, what I said in the beginning, the moral of all my stories is right. I may have gotten it. I may have said February 1978 when it was March of 1972, or well, not that big a discrepancy, but I may have gotten a date wrong, but I didn't get the moral of the story wrong. I mean, that's the sentiment, and the story's real.
So, I loved that part of the book where you talk about how, you had to piece together so much, because I just from knowing you and getting to talk to you, I know there's certain dates that just live with you in infamy, but there was others where you were like, oh, I didn't remember that my brother, you talked to your brother Frankie, and he was like, I was in your class, Val. Yeah. Like, I didn't know that. Yeah. So what were some of the favorite memories that came about as a result of researching and writing the book?
Well, again, a lot of these were I had written about already, but I think one of the best stories that lays the framework, or laid out the framework of my brother Joe and my relationship, was my story of Mary McGee, who was my best girlfriend when we lived in Scranton, and I was 5 years old. We lived in my grandparents' house, and Mary was turning 6, and I was and in those days, when we went to school, we didn't go to pre-KK, pre-first. We went right into first grade, into the hell of fire, which was the nun, Sister Margaret Mary, when boom, and she was there. And, and it's like, okay, sister, we sat with, on the desk with folded hands. So Mary McGee went to a different school. She went to the public school, and I went to Marywood Seminary, was called. Anyway, she had a birthday party across the street, go to the birthday party. And, 5-year-old and 6-year-old and 20-year-old girls aren't always so nice to the new girl, who walks in. So I didn't know any of her friends. They weren't the neighborhood, they were her school friends. And Mrs. McGee was nice, but none of the little girls would talk to me. And I started to cry, and I went to Mrs. McGee and I said, I want to go home. And Mrs. McGee said, oh, Valerie, no, you stay. And I said, no, I want my brother. And Mrs. McGee calls my mom, and my mom runs up the block, 2 blocks. It was Maloney Field. It was not organized baseball. It was a lot where they played baseball. And she runs up and she gets Joe, brings him back, cleans him, scruffs him behind the ear, spit shines his part, puts his little jacket on. And he came over and he rings the doorbell and he said, Mrs. McGee, I'm Joey Biden, and may I come in? And she said, certainly. And he stayed with me the whole party. He played musical chairs, pinned the tail on the donkey, with all these little girls. When it was over, we walked out the door and I said, oh, thank you, Joey, for coming. He said, no, thank you, Valerie. He said, thank you for inviting me. I had a wonderful time. That's the way it built from then on. And I had his back as we got older. I had his back just as much as he had. I ran some pretty good interference with some of those girls who were after him. I ran
and he did the same for you, right? Wasn't that the deal? It was,
yeah.
You couldn't be friends, you couldn't date any of his friends either.
Yeah, I couldn't date anybody he knew because he knew him, and I couldn't date anybody he didn't know because he didn't know him. Somehow I got around it.
Yeah, somehow you did.
Around it. Yeah.
No, that's just so special. And again, it's just every story in the book is like that, where, again, to your point, it's not all good and it's not all glossy, but there's just
there's some sad stories. But I think, every story has, this is from Joe Slade White days when I was at that conference. Every story has some magic in it, either for the storyteller or the person who's listening to it. That's a story. And so they're good, and they're happy moments and sad moments. I mean, if you just tell all the good stuff, it's like, what are you kidding me? You lived, Cinderella. No, but it's like, I bet, like your life, like I said, like the women who are men and women who are watching this, it's all of our lives. And the quote that I like best is one from Kierkegaard, and it says, faith sees best in the dark. And that's the hardest time, when you think you're in control, and you just gotta let go. And I said the hardest words in my vocabulary, this good Catholic schoolgirl, quote unquote, may, thy will be done. And boy, that's awfully hard to say. I want my will to be done, but to let go and to say, thy will be done. And that's tough, but that's what we got to do.
That's what it is. Final question for you. And, you're an author now, even though you've been an author, to your point, throughout your life.
No, not a real big girl.
Not a big girl author, but
I remind my brother, I stop strangers on the street and say, hi, do you know who I am? I
wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
I think it's a huge accomplishment. And as I said, something that's on my bucket list to do at some point in my life. But tell us about that, as we close out here, just tell us a little bit about that process for those that are listening and who also are storytellers and writers, and what's been the best part and what's been the most challenging part?
Well, the woman in me, my answer is that it was like giving birth to an elephant. It was difficult, but it was not, the writing wasn't difficult. I love to write, and so that wasn't hard. I mean, it was hard, but that wasn't the stopper. What was the difficult part was choosing among I have literally, Biden word, literally hundreds of vignettes and short stories. So it was choosing which one, like, who cares, like, well, who would care? And putting it together in a way that it had some continuity, or it had some flow, that it was an easy read. And so I think editing is much more difficult than writing. Writing is much more natural to me. Editing is like, is second guessing all the time. Like, oh, I don't know anybody would care about this, and let me put this one in. And then, I have on my desk, I have, 27 paragraphs and I'm trying to juxtapose and put in different order. And I says, just sit down and write the damn thing and let it go. So that was
Figure
the
it
hard
out.
part. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. And so what's the fun part or the most surprising?
Was that I did it, and my children were my biggest cheerleaders, and they were, Mommy, I am so proud of you. That's the joy. And they saw that I worked hard, and I want to do it. I want to do it the right way. I mean, if you're going to write a book, you want it to be the best book. And so I did work hard, and I did concentrate, and my children were my biggest cheerleaders, and like, oh, that, oh, this is really good. This is really funny. Or maybe you should do this. They were the ones who would throw things back and forth to me. And I don't think I would have gotten through without them, without their encouragement. My husband's the steady anchor, but when he would tell me, he said, I read this paragraph and I'm thinking, I don't care. Like, you didn't grow up Biden, but my children, I took it, I loved the way they handled me, and I knew I was being handled, and I appreciated their care.
That gets back to, again, the core themes of your book. It's like surrounding yourself with family, but surrounding yourself with people who hold you accountable and tell you the truth, because it's,
no, they're truth tellers, but they never, my son said something marvelous to me. I have a girl, Missy's the eldest, who you know. And we were at a dinner after one of these book events, and the woman who had sponsored it was an in-person dinner, it was in Boston, and said, so tell me about, and he happened to be there, he flew in to be with me. And so tell me about a time when you got mad at too much. Tell me about something your mother did to you that you were really mad, or what she said to you. And he looked straight at me and said, my mother's never said or done a cruel thing to me in my entire life. And she looked, and I looked, and I said, I mean, it filled me with such joy, but I mean, I started to cry, and I said, oh, Cuff, we got to make this real. Think of something. And he said, I can't. You have never been cruel. And that doesn't mean that I haven't been stern, and I haven't told him to go to his room. But he said, if he got it, it was just.
Yeah.
But this is really sounding really obnoxious.
No, not at all, Val. This has been spectacular and so amazing. And thank you for letting us into your life and your career. Again, I thought the book was just absolutely beautiful, and not only exactly what we need for the moment, but I think the lessons and the messages stand the test of time. And I'm really grateful that you shared it.
Well, thank you, Caitlin. Thank you. I'm glad that you're Missy and Kate and Annie's friend, and they strong-armed you to call me. So thank you.
Not at all. And this is in part because I missed your book party. So I was like, well, I want to do something. And
that
so
really screwed things up. So
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, this was wonderful. And I don't see any of our audience, but I appreciate wherever you are.
They are weighing in. I see the chat. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it, Val. And I don't know. I hope there's more to come. I'm ready for the next book.
Oh, not quite yet. Maybe. Thanks, Caitlin. I appreciate you. Bye.
Have a great week. Bye.